everyone. This is Pam Reese with Adventures in Aging, and I'm here with my partner,
Gary Vandenberg. It's great to be back, Pam.
Hey, Gary. First of all, just wanted to thank all of our listeners who have been tuning in to Adventures in Aging, and want all of them to know how much we appreciate them listening and sharing our podcast.
Yes, thank you so much. And we enjoy doing these, and I hope you're enjoing listening to them along the way.
Absolutely.
What is today's topic, Pam?
Today is Alzheimer's and related dementias.
Wow, that's a heavy duty subject, isn't it?
It is. And with Alzheimer's being the 6th leading cause of death
wow, I didn't know that.
In the world, it is an important subject. And at some point in life, we will all know someone with Alzheimer's. Right. There are actually today about 6 million people living in just the United States that have been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And that's just who we know.
That's huge numbers.
Right. Plus, there's about 17 million caregivers at home caring for a loved one with Alzheimer's. And so it's an important subject. And so hopefully today we can, answer some questions and give some ideas on how to cope with Alzheimer's.
Good. Look forward to it.
So I think a big misperception is what is Alzheimer's, what is dementia? Are these two different things?
I always thought they were kind of similar.
Right.
I think most people probably do that.
They do, and they're not. So dementia is not a specific disease. It's a general term that's given to impaired ability to remember. It is a general term given to any neurological condition that affects your cognition. And so under the category of dementia is different categories. Number one is Alzheimer's. Mm-hmm. So Alzheimer's is a form of dementia that affects about 60 to 80% of people with dementia. Mm-hmm. Next would be vascular dementia. And that is people that have had strokes or some vascular condition that created also some memory and cognition issues.
So if you banged your head, you could potentially get dementia, but you may not get Alzheimer's.
Correct.
Okay.
That's correct. And then just to name a few, there's Lewy body dementia. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. But that is a neurological condition that creates some symptoms like visual hallucinations, people falling asleep, not sleeping at night or sleeping unexpectedly or during the day. They might also faint or become lost or disoriented. Another form of dementia might be Parkinson's disease, where eventually those folks might have some frightening hallucinations and some behavior and personality changes.
Now, with Parkinson's, does that head towards Alzheimer's? I've heard that in the past. Is that
so
truth?
Because it can affect your brain and neurological impulses and activity, it falls into the dementia category, if that makes sense. There can also be frontotemporal dementia. It's a name that's given to several types of dementia. And one of those might be a disease that's called Pick's disease. And it's where the person might lose control of their language and their behavior. And it's a very sad disease. And I have seen in my career several people that were diagnosed with Pick's disease, and generally will affect people that are much younger.
Oh, they do. I was going to ask you whether some of these dementias occur when people are younger. You're saying they do.
Interestingly, Alzheimer's, just in Alzheimer's itself, can start to form in individuals decades before their first symptom. And that's a very frightening fact. The thing with Alzheimer's is that, and all the dementias, there is no prevention, there's no treatment, and there's no cure as of...
There's no memory games you can't play or something? I always think of that.
Yeah.
Maybe if I just did or take more of these pills that sharpen your brain, is that going to change anything if I have Alzheimer's?
Sure. So let's talk about my mom. my mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in her late 80s. And throughout my life with my mom, and from the time I was in nursing school and I would come home and I would talk about the residents or the patients that I took care of with Alzheimer's, my mom would tell me it is the disease she never wanted. Just don't let me get Alzheimer's. And she knew some people in her life that had it, some friends, and I think her sister's mother-in-law had it. And we would spend hours and hours talking about the symptoms of Alzheimer's and what a horrible disease. And honestly, Gary, we would laugh out loud about some of the antics and some of the behaviors. And at the end of the day, you can either laugh or you can cry. There is some behavior that can be hilarious. And then, of course, when you really look at what's happening to that individual, it's very, very sad. But my mom did all those preventives, right? She would even say, I have to do a lot of crossword puzzles. And then she started taking zinc. And then she started reading more. And then there was a study or something she read that said that if you spell out your name and then say it backwards, spell your name backwards, and then apply 3 objects to every letter. So, for instance, in my name's Pamela. I would start with A because that's the end letter, and I would say, oh, apple, auto, another, and then I would go to.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, but I promise you, my mother did that, and then lo and behold, she got it, and so it impacted my family's life tremendously.
Now, how does one know when they got it? Is there a diagnosis? Is there a test that somebody would take at some point? Did your mom have something that was like a...
So I think one of the biggest issues with Alzheimer's is, when do you know? When do you say my mom, my dad, my husband, my wife, whoever it is, has Alzheimer's, or me, right? Or yourself.
Right.
And like you and I have had discussions about, don't you forget, you walk into a room, you don't remember why you're in that room.
My most common one is, I don't know if I washed my hair or not. I'm sure I'm going through lots of shampoo because it's like, if I don't have a routine, I sometimes go, I better jump back in and wash my hair again.
Oh, for goodness sakes.
Isn't that crazy?
I might be concerned about that.
And then, I think we all walk into a room going, what did I walk in here to get?
Oh, yeah.
And then turn around, walk away, and instantly you come back and go, now I remember. But all these things kind of lead to saying, oh, gosh, I must have it.
Yeah.
But I think we all have those questions, don't we?
Well, for sure, everyone has a normal level of forgetfulness, right? Everybody does. No matter how old you are, you have a certain level of forgetfulness. The difference is the amount of times and what it affects. So, for instance, and I can use my mom as an example, she would forget where she left her purse. Well, originally, that's not a big deal. Here it is. It's in your bedroom. Next time, I don't know where I put my purse. Well, then I find her purse in her closet underneath of shoes. Well, now I'm thinking, Mom, why would you put your purse in a really unusual place, right? Underneath of shoes, it's hidden. It was deliberately done, but she had no recollection of that.
Or sometimes people drive around, don't they? They can't find their way back to their...
That's right.
So I think that's different than missing my car in the parking lot, which I tend to do that constantly.
I do it all the time.
Walk out going, now it's one of these rows, and it's a black car.
Right. And thank God for the remotes there where you can, press it.
My battery died a long time ago.
Oh, my gosh. Well, I rely on mine to turn on the lights or beep the horn to follow the sound.
So these were unusual. There's going to be something that
it's outside of the norm. Yeah. It's outside of normal forgetfulness. And the thing that is very important for people to know is that it can be very subtle, and it's a very difficult thing for families to recognize immediately. And you don't want to believe it, right? It's something you just don't want to believe that your mom or your dad or your loved one could be experiencing Alzheimer's. But when a routine is no longer a routine for that person, then there's a suspicion. And so you're right about driving. That person always drove a normal route every day. And then suddenly there's that day when they can't find their way to their normal destination, whether it's, a post office, a bank, a grocery store, or a gas station. That's the time when you start looking at what else is going on. Another very subtle early symptom is when that person is in a room with others. So, for instance, my mom, we would have family gatherings, and my mom was always participatory in conversations and would always ask a lot of questions and would laugh out loud. And I absolutely noticed that my mom was silent. She would be an observer in that room. And in the beginning, I thought, why is mom not talking? Right. Why is she not interacting with us? Mm-hmm. And so that leads to these suspicions of Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's has always been a very difficult disease to diagnose. And a lot has been said that you really can't diagnose Alzheimer's until an autopsy, until someone has passed away.
Isn't there a test, though? I've seen tests like the clocks and the numbers. And
sure.
And they give you a series of numbers and then tell you in 5 minutes what were those numbers or something like that.
So the first time I took my mom to a neurologist, and I suspected Alzheimer's, but I can tell you that I denied Alzheimer's for a year, right? I did not want to believe that my mom truly had Alzheimer's. And it was the day that she asked me what I did, what my career was. What do you do? And I literally got so upset. Mom, what do you mean? Right? What do you mean? What do I do? She said, what do you do for a job? And I said, Mom, I'm a nurse. Oh, that's when I knew.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, that was, and a subject, a topic that Mom and I talked about forever. And so when that happened, I knew. And so I took her to a neurologist, and as all neurologists or all geriatric specialists, and one of the Alzheimer's tests is a routine test where you draw a clock and you have to draw it correctly. And part of that testing is I'm going to tell you 3 words, and then at the end of our conversation, I'm going to ask you to repeat those words back to me. And so when Mom and I went for that initial testing with the neurologist, of course she went through all that testing. And I'll tell you, Gary, I sat by her and I did not want her to be embarrassed because at that time she was aware that she couldn't remember these things. Like when they asked her who was president, what year it was, Mom would look at me. Yeah. And I promise you I answered.
Did you ever see that Glenn Campbell movie?
I never did.
It was like a sequence of his last life, and he did these tours, and he knew every word of every song pretty much till the last of the concert series. But he would go to the doctor, and the doctor would say, who's the president? Oh, you know who the president is. I don't need to tell you who the president is. Why are you insulting me with these stupid questions? And it was his defense mechanism of how to get away with it. And
100% there's a defense mechanism in the beginning.
I'd encourage anyone I always like Glenn Campbell. I mean, if you ever want to see a good movie, it definitely shows the progression of the disease while they're trying to get his last concert series through.
Oh my gosh, that's sad.
And towards the end, he does start to forget the words, and it is a sad thing to do.
Yeah, I didn't know.
And then how his family has moved on with, continuing to respect, the dementia and Alzheimer's in the population. But so your mom's getting these tests, and again, there's a denial. I mean, there's part of this has to be, is this, going back to my questions, like, is this genetic? Do I get it? I mean, do you start thinking about that right away?
Well, so every time I forget something, I think, oh no, here it is.
But we don't know if it is or not. Right?
We don't. There's a lot of theories about why people have Alzheimer's or dementia. And of course, there's traumatic brain injury, there's alcohol dementia, and there's the other ones that I had already mentioned, right? There's lots of other reasons.
I know when I was in college in gerontology, we had this, we were reading this one thing that had to do with fingerprints.
Okay.
And I've got the Alzheimer's fingerprint. It was so weird. We all did fingerprints.
Yeah.
The way the fingerprints looped around, that meant you probably had Alzheimer's.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I don't know if that was true or not.
I don't know if that's true.
Thank goodness. I know in my family, we die of heart attacks pretty quick.
So you're going any day.
So this is, yeah. And the other thing is kind of trying to keep this a little light at times. It's, the person who has it doesn't know what's going on, do they? At some point, do they move into a different world? And
so I think just from my experience, I'm not the scientist, I'm not the gerontologist or the neurologist. So a lot of stuff here is my personal opinion in working with Alzheimer's residents my whole life, and also taking care of my mom and taking a huge interest in the subject of Alzheimer's and dementia and doing incredible research on that subject. I think in the beginning, Mom did know. I think sometimes people do know that they can't remember, but it's an embarrassing moment for them. And so, as you said, with Glenn Campbell, my mom was the same way. She did not want to admit that she forgot something, and she did not want to acknowledge that maybe she was different. And she would absolutely say, "No, I'm not. No, I do remember, or I do know." And then eventually, as you progress through the stages of these diseases, it becomes worse and worse.
Now, when somebody's diagnosed, is it a disease that is going to happen in quickly, or is it something that's drawn out over like 5, 10, 15 years?
So Alzheimer's can be drawn out over a number of years. So with my mom, it was probably 9 years. Some people, it's quicker, but it's a long, laborious, horrible disease that progresses over time.
I would imagine, being in senior living here, there's different phases too. There's a point where people have progressed to that last stage, and that's unfortunate. But that's they don't benefit from any programming or activities or structure type of things.
So there's depending on what you want to read or what neurologist you want to talk to, there can be 3 stages of Alzheimer's. There can be 7 stages. There can be 4 stages, but at the end of the day, there's the mild, the moderate, and the severe. Then the severe is the end of life. And so I've seen many residents, as well as my mom, go through all 3 of those stages. And the progression through those stages is very dependent on their environment. And you have the ability to sometimes slow the progression of the disease. Eventually, Alzheimer's is going to affect every organ in your body. It's a deterioration in your brain, and in fact, it's a plaque buildup. Just to simplify what is happening to the brain, it's a plaque buildup in the cells in the brain.
Now, is there things we can do to avoid that? I mean, I remember one time someone saying about even deodorant. If you use different types of deodorant, it may cause that later.
Yeah, so there's all kinds of theories. But, it's said, well, have a healthy lifestyle, exercise, don't smoke, don't drink, there's all the normal healthy lifestyle things that you can do. And I can tell you that my mom, other than exercising regularly, had an incredibly healthy lifestyle. And so it still affected her. And I'm sure there's many, many people that it has also affected. There's the thought about crossword puzzles and also taking zinc. And then, no, don't take zinc. It's a mineral, or, you don't want to do that. I can say what it is you do. I'm hearing a lot about omega-3. Take omega-3 to not get it. Drinking caffeine. There's different antidotes depending on the literature that you're reading.
I would think that, again, going back to the caregiver side of this, I mean, how does a person, you're saying the majority of people are not in like nursing homes. They're in their own home. They're living alone.
80% of people with Alzheimer's are living at home.
When it comes to the caregiver, what suggestions do you have on how they should educate themselves,
Sure.
be that supportive person, but not get burned out. And I know one thing that struck me was the fact that I think some of these caregivers probably die before the person that has Alzheimer's dies.
So
right?
true. So taking care of Alzheimer's is a very sad and long journey. And one of the sadnesses with this is that it's prolonged and it's over time. But you look at your loved one and they look the same. They look like who they used to be, but they don't talk like they used to be. Their personality isn't what it used to be. And it's a very complicated and difficult disease to reconcile. And so, for instance, if you're a wife taking care of your husband with Alzheimer's, that man may have been your rock, the provider of the family, the strong-willed person, and now they're weak, and their behavior is different. Their personality is different. And so not only are you meeting their medical and clinical needs as they progress through this, but you're also having to accept that they are not the same person on the inside that they once were.
So when it comes to, again, back to the families, I'm trying to keep this optimistic here,
Sure.
Pam. So what hope do you have? Let's share some hope with our listeners that
Sure.
That there had to be sometimes, we've talked about music, we've talked about things that they can influence it, right?
Yeah.
Was your mom, was she one that would sing? Was she somebody that would?
So in my research and in my study of Alzheimer's and in what I saw in best practice, the Alzheimer's patient, in spite of losing declarative memory, has the innate ability to feel. They can feel emotion. And just by virtue of 95% of people with Alzheimer's, even into their late stages, if they were given a baby doll to hold, they still cradle that baby doll and hold that baby as if it is real. They still smile at children. They still may laugh at a funny statement. And so the best way to care for a person with Alzheimer's is to make every single day a very positive and uplifting day. The Alzheimer's resident and patient may not remember the triggers of why they feel the way they feel, but they remember the feeling. And so it makes it so much easier on the caregiver if from the moment their loved one with Alzheimer's wakes up to the moment they go to bed, that they create this very, very serene, peaceful, happy, and uplifting environment for them. It's not only going to help their loved one with Alzheimer's, but it's going to help the caregiver as well.
So it doesn't help to yell at somebody that has Alzheimer's dementia and say, just snap out of it.
Right. It's so easy to do.
And I just imagine the stresses that must go along with that type of thing. When I was thinking about music and things, is there a reason why people remember stories? Like I remember all kinds of stuff. I can in my own mind think when walking around when I'm 5 and 6 years old. And then I can't remember, 20 minutes ago if I walked in and out of something.
So we all know short-term memory is the first to go, right? Short-term, that's why people with Alzheimer's will remember their moms, their dads, and activities many, many years ago. Having said that, my mom could sing Happy Birthday beautifully, 4 days before she died. She couldn't talk. She lost her ability to speak correctly. She lost her ability to understand language, but she could sing. She could remember that song. I don't know why. I don't know why that happens, but it's a positive moment.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's really something. And then, there must be something with stimuli, I guess you call it. Can you create a lower stimuli, overstimuli, the right or wrong? Is there something that you...
So Alzheimer's is a very confusing phenomenon for the patient. Imagine knowing you know someone, but you can't remember them. Now, I'm not talking about those times, Gary, when we always see people and we go, I know their name, but I can't think of it.
Right.
This is seeing your son or your daughter, and by gosh, you can't think of their name, or you can't for a moment think of your connection, but you know you have one. And that's the feeling in the beginning. And that feeling of confusion and that feeling of out of control is, for anyone, would be unsettling, and it would be confusing, and it would be stressful. So the Alzheimer's patient is going through confusion, stress-induced environments and situations all the time until they reach a point where they just really don't even think about remembering. They just don't. And so having these moments of positiveness and songs and anything that brings peace to your mind today, and think of those things that bring peace to you today. It might be your favorite song. It might be a drive. It might be just sitting in a room that's beautiful, or visiting a beautiful garden. And these are things that make you feel good. These are the things you want to do for someone with Alzheimer's.
All right. So to create that environment.
Yes.
Wow.
Yep, for sure. Another really good treatment for someone with Alzheimer's, and I'm not even sure it's a treatment, it's just a quality of life, is to have them around children. So children and the elderly are both pure at heart, right? They both have a pure heart, and so maybe that's why they have a good understanding and good relationships. And as I mentioned before, you hand a baby doll to someone with Alzheimer's, they cradle and they nurture that baby doll. And some people, they do that because they remember their children and they remember when their daughter was a baby. Well, I don't know that to be true, but it's an instinct. It's instinctive. And children, in most cases, will bring joy and pleasure to the patient with Alzheimer's. Children playing, children laughing is a fabulous observable activity for someone with Alzheimer's. Now, of course, you have to explain to the children what's happening with grandma or great grandma, right? Why are they asking me the same questions? Why are they, acting so odd? And it can be explained. In fact, Gary, I wrote a book called Gigi, Are You In There? Mia Learns About Alzheimer's. And I wrote that specifically for children of great-grandparents or grandparents of Alzheimer's. But I got that story realistically from my grandchildren around my mom, and they brought her the most joy.
So it's a children's book, right?
It is.
So it's written more for, I don't know, for what age range would that?
So that would be from a 4 to 8-year-old, and it explains what Alzheimer's is, and what is the most important aspects that they, or the activity that they can bring to that person with Alzheimer's. And even having a level of understanding that even though their minds and their brains don't remember, their heart does. Their heart does remember.
Now, there has to be a point that somebody's care or their situation just requires too much, right? That they have to move on to maybe looking at somewhere to go,
sure,
to have somebody around the clock there.
Yeah, so the person with Alzheimer's and just, from being a provider, owning nursing facilities and memory cares, rehabilitation centers, I did not want to put my mom in any of those places. I wanted to keep her at home, and I wanted to keep her around familiarity and around her family and around the people that love her. And there does come a time when the care and services become a lot. So when my mom reached the point that she needed a 2-person assist to go to the bathroom or to have a shower, it was very difficult to ensure that there were 2 people around all the time. And so people may be forced to make a decision about a memory care facility for their loved one.
I know in the last couple of years, I've looked at over 200 different companies that have memory care units.
Sure.
And just kind of put together just a short list here of some things that maybe our listeners might want to take. And if
it's always
ideal to create this in your own home or
sure,
the home of somebody, but maybe this is something to look for, like a consumer's guide. Obviously, the first thing deals with the philosophy of anyone that can create a home-like environment is always the best. That's enriching of one's life.
Yep.
Dignity, the independence, those types of things.
Sure.
And then it deals with, when we talk about different stages there, I always say anytime it can tie in somebody's emotional needs, their intellectual, cognitive needs, their leisure needs, the physical needs, the social needs, and the spiritual needs. You're always better off if you can.
And you know what? Those needs never leave you.
And so if you do find yourself looking for a memory care like location, obviously safety is always number one.
Sure. You
want somewhere that's a safe environment. And little things matter. I mean, even things as far as how windows open. You know, you don't want to be in a place where somebody's at risk of climbing out a window. And I've seen that happen. And you go, how did that happen? And somebody's now outside and, it's elopements, I guess we term them.
And you want minimalized chaos.
And then, as you said, the whole idea about the environment. And, there's pros and cons and different opinions, but I've seen things such as the glare on floors, whether that creates a feeling like you're stepping into a hole, the colors, the noise, the smell, even things such as like clocks, believe it or not, the bulletin boards that kind of have different degrees of, this is today, this is the season, these are the holidays, can only help with some of those types of things. The idea of even things like the showers, the walk-in showers, whether you're having to step over something, whether you can go right into it.
Yes.
I know different people have different opinions about memory boxes. What do you think about memory boxes? These are these little glass little boxes outside the residence door, and it has pictures, has little things about them in there.
So I've gone back and forth with memory boxes and some of the standardization that you see in the memory care facilities. And memory boxes, just so our listeners know, is where a facility will ask you to create or to bring into the facility knickknacks and pictures and sentimental artifacts that your loved one with Alzheimer's cherished throughout their life. And so they could go through that box and hopefully spark a memory. So can an Alzheimer's person memory be sparked? Yes. At times it can. Surprisingly, at times it can. Is it always happen? No, it does not. What does happen is, as I mentioned, a moment of goodness and a moment of pleasure and something that makes them feel good. And so if you have a box of artifacts, make it pleasant, make it pictures. Everyone likes to look at pictures, right? And especially the elderly, they like those memories. And even looking at a picture where you may not remember that's your brother and your mom in that picture, there's something pleasant and peaceful about it. And then it's even great when a family member is there with them looking at it so that they can remind them, that's your brother, that's your mom. And so I go back and forth, but at the end of the day, it's probably not a bad idea.
All right. Just as long as they're well done.
Yes.
I've also seen, I guess you call them stations. It's some type of bassinet, like you said, a nursery or an office. I've seen where there's a typewriter and a desk. That there's gentlemen or women, too, that can go to work each day. There's gardening areas. There's a kitchen kind of set up that people can go in and kind of go through their something of importance in their lives.
So before you reach your end stage of Alzheimer's, having those types of environments is wonderful in that it brings a positive activity. It brings something that is positive and that they're able to do. Now, a lot of people or a lot of providers will say, well, I did that because this is for the people that used to be that work in an office, or this kitchen is for the bakers, or that it will bring back some memory. As we said, sometimes it will, but on the other hand, it can bring an activity where the resident is not even sure of what that trigger for that activity is, but it's different, and it causes them to gravitate to that. And so anytime that you can create a positive space or positive activity is a good thing.
Yeah, with activities, I think, isn't the goal to have shorter activities?
Yes.
And have maybe more of them? I've seen as many as like 6 in a day.
Sure.
And have some type of a structure. How does structure help with
so, is it good to have a routine? It's good to have a routine with everybody. Does the Alzheimer's resident know that, hey, I take my shower at 6, I eat at 8? They don't. They don't. And they might change every single day. And so when you're working with an Alzheimer's resident, your schedule is based off of their behavior and their mood.
It just seems like if you have any kind of I've been in these memory care areas that have, very small, 10 people up to 60.
Sure.
And ones that are very large. But everyone's in a different place, it sounds like, though, right? I mean, in their disease.
They are.
And so when you're trying to have one place fit all their needs, that's probably part of the bigger challenge.
It is a bigger challenge. And so I would encourage our listeners that are dealing with these very hard decisions right now, that you want to find a memory care where that it's dividing the levels of Alzheimer's.
And something that I've seen the last couple of years too is where providers, these are memory care, assisted living primarily, that they're reaching out to like first responders, like the fire department, police department, trying to educate them on if you see this in the community, if you get a call that somebody's acting a certain way, this is some suggestions you might have.
Yes.
I've seen that. And the same with physicians' offices. That's sometimes that first place that someone's in there with their mother, like you probably were, and what's going on is being alert and being educated.
So a big initiative with dementia and Alzheimer's is to do community social awareness and education. It's such a prevalent disease, and the more educated and the more aware the people are of the beginning stages and how this progresses and what you can do. Because as we mentioned, there are things you can do to lessen the impact, and decrease the progression, the better that it is.
Well, I know we've covered a lot. To try to cram everything one knows about Alzheimer's, you've been on different state boards and different committees throughout your career, and I've been in many different memory care units. It's hard to pack it on here. Hopefully our listeners got a little bit more awareness about what to look for in their own family members and their friends and relatives, and be that supportive help. It doesn't, the best thing you can do is probably, again, go on that adventure, right?
Yes.
Adventures in aging is part of this. We probably can't stop Alzheimer's, but, we can be part of that adventure and make the most of it.
And I know that we will have more podcasts digging deeper into Alzheimer's and dementia and talking more about the programming and some of the things that we can do positively. So I thought this was a good podcast today, Gary.
I learned something. I always learn something.
Very important subject. So anyway, just want to say thank you to all of our listeners. Please like, subscribe, rate us, and share our podcast with others. We appreciate every time you do that. And we look forward to talking to you next time. Thank you.